Hi, I am Penny Haynes of Penny Haynes Life Patterns Ministry Counseling, and I am also the administrator for joint conferences and free online conferences. I'm also a programmer, so I've also created an app which it's been out for several years called Jesus Text Me. And those are the main things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Of course, I'm also a counselor at Good Shepherd Recovery House, and I am co-pastor with my husband of Ministry House and co-leader of Celebrate Recovery. So I'm a very busy person. In any case, this networking video is going to be more informal than it would be if I was doing an actual presentation. But I would like you to get to know me and get to know a little bit more about me. For one, I am a Christian counselor, and I am the only Christian in my family. My family is Jewish. Everybody else in my family is Jewish. And I converted to Christianity when I was 19 years old. And I had been struggling. I had been seeking God in some way. But for Jews, Christians are them. The others. You're never supposed to become a Christian. So Christianity was the last vestige, the last journey that I had, obviously. But I started out with Taoism and learning about how God was everywhere. I tested and tried out Buddhism and Hinduism and other things, and nothing was quite personal enough. I just did not believe, it did not connect with me. And it was just everything was out there. There was no connection with me, and it just didn't do it for me. And one day I got so desperate because of some family issues, some things that were going on in my family. And my mom and I were having problems. My dad said, "Why can't you just be nice to her? If you'd be nice to her, she'd be nice to you." And I told him, I said, "When she talks, the hair on the back of my neck just stands up." You know, I'm 19 years old, 18 years old. I said, I have no control over that. And I realized I had gotten to the point where I just didn't care if my mother lived or died. And I thought, what kind of person is that? And that realization that there just must be something wrong with me if I just didn't care if somebody in my own family lived or died, pushed me to find out who this Jesus was. And so I went to a girl who I had known since 6th grade and had known her family, and her family's house was always very different than anybody else's house. It was just, there was something about it that was warm and inviting and loving and kind, and the way they treated each other was really, really nice. And she was a Christian. The whole family were Christians. And I remember her once sharing with me when it was in 9th grade, she had broken up with her boyfriend, and she said she was laying there in her bed, and she just wished at that moment, she'd been crying, that somebody would just hold her. And at that moment, she felt this huge hug around her. And she realized that that was God. And little did she know that that little comment would stick with me for several years, actually, until the right time came. And that seed was planted, and later on it bore fruit. And when I was 19, she's the person I went to when I was finally ready to find out more about Christianity. And I took her someplace in my car alone off on Spalding Drive near the river so nobody would know. And I said, "Tell me about Jesus." And I probably freaked her out because she didn't share the gospel with me. She didn't do nothing. She just said, "Here, come with me." And she had me drive to her house, and she gave me a Bible, and she wrote my name in it, which horrified me. And so I scratched it out. And she said, "Read John and Romans." And she sent me on my way, which was really probably the very best thing that could have happened, because I had been very anti-God, very anti-Christian in my first year of college. As a matter of fact, I called them the God Squad. So somebody trying to explain it to me probably wasn't the best idea. And I went in and I read John and I read Romans, and it changed everything for me. And I got to Romans 10, 9, and 10, you know, that if you believe in your heart that God raised Jesus from the dead, and you profess with your mouth that he is Lord, that you will be saved. And I thought, I can't do that. I can't do that. I don't know if it was a Jew in me or if the what in me. And my dad had always taught me that Christians were just, that Jesus was just a story that Jews would tell the non-Jews, since the non-Jews needed a miracle or something, that they had made up this story, and that's how they would proselytize people. So I just believed what my dad said. But I was really, really struggling with that. I can't believe that you raised Jesus from the dead. And that was a big problem. And outside of myself, I heard this voice in my head that said, am I God? And through Taoism, I had come to a knowledge of God. Am I God? And I said, yes. And he said, since I am God, can I do anything? And I said, well, by virtue of logic, yes, if you're God, you can do anything. He said, could I raise someone from the dead? If I am God and I can do anything, could I raise someone from the dead? And I went, well, yeah. And he said, then could I have raised Jesus from the dead? It was like, that was amazing, that God broke into my consciousness and spoke my language. And I wasn't thinking about this at all. My thoughts were nowhere near that. And I said, yes, I can believe that you could. So I'm going to take that leap of faith, and I'm going to believe that you did raise Jesus from the dead. And then I was able to call him Lord, and that was July 14th, 1983. It was Bastille Day, and my life was changed forever. So that's just my background. I did not mean to go into my testimony, but I'm just feeling led that's where I needed to go. So you know who I am. And I have a long history of deep, deep depression. I had a 7 or 8 year period where it was so bad I called it comatose depression. I couldn't smile. I couldn't laugh. I tried going to church, and the greeters, hi, how you doing? I hated greeters. I hated greeters because I couldn't smile for them. And I'm not the kind of person who can be fake. So it was just miserable for me. But my husband and I started going to a different church, and the church asked my husband, who used to be a drug dealer a long time ago. He's been a pastor since then. And they asked if he would lead Celebrate Recovery for members of the church. And so we learned about that. And you needed 2 leaders, one for the women and one for the men. I did not want to do it. And it's because I was so, so depressed that I believed that God could heal everybody else, but that he wouldn't be able to heal me. But lo and behold, by the end of the first year, through Celebrate Recovery and doing a 9-month, 12-step Celebrate Recovery step book, the depression lifted. And I was able to start moving forward. And back then, that was in 2010, I created a website called Christian Women with Depression because I could not find any support groups at all where Christian women could go and just talk about what was going on in them and how they were feeling without being condemned by other people saying, well, you just don't have enough faith, or you're a Christian and whatever. And that was really pretty popular. As of right now, there are 2,300 women from around the world in there. But the sad thing is that I knew of a pastor's wife who had to create a totally separate fake profile to join because she was so scared that anybody in her congregation would know that she struggled with depression. And I thought that was just so sad. But that's where I have my affinity with depression. And also I used to have panic attacks, anxiety attacks. And that's why women who struggle with depression, anxiety, fear, all of those things, they're very close to my heart. I know exactly what that's like. Another thing is codependency, which when I was studying for my drug and alcohol counseling certification, I had to take some classes for my licensed pastoral counseling on codependency, and then really went in a lot deeper. And I'm really big on Stephanie Tucker's Christian Codependency Workbook, which I have taught many times and do it as a 16-week course. As a matter of fact, the video from the course is on my membership website, if you're interested. And it is 24 hours of video, 16 weeks worth of information that goes along with the workbook, where I led a group of people through it. And so I was very, very bad with codependency for a long time, and trying to get my value and my worth from people outside of myself. And so I really connect with people with codependency. Codependency is a sliding scale. I am much lower on the scale, but I was once really, really high on the scale. For example, I used to, if my husband was upset with me, I would follow him through the house going, "Why are you angry with me? Why are you angry with me?" And he couldn't shake me, but I couldn't handle someone else being angry with me. What do I have to do to make you not angry with me? Why are you unhappy with me? What do I have to do to make you like me? And that was a really miserable, miserable time in my life. I also know what it's like to have a really bad marriage. First 10 years for my husband and I was sheer hell. It was horrible. We were both so broken. I tell my counseling clients and the guys up at Good Shepherd, you will always be attracted to someone who is equally as broken as you are, only in a complimentary way. And Ronnie and I were equally broken in complementary ways, and our own hurts and insecurities and everything else, plus some traumas that happened to us. We couldn't have children. This is my second marriage, so I also understand about divorce. I also understand how depressing it can be to get a divorce, and even more so to feel as a Christian that you failed God or that you'll never be able to be in ministry again. I actually got suicidal at the thought of the divorce from my first husband, because I thought, I wanted to serve God and minister and would never be able to do that again. So we had some things. We couldn't have kids, and we tried in vitro, and we lost both of them, and which was devastating to my husband. And then he had 2 deaths over a couple of years of close relatives, and it was just so bad. And so his depression, my depression, it was just a toxic mix. And of course, my the way I have dealt with life in my past was I would escape into fantasy. I've done that since I was a child. And it was just a lot easier to dissociate and just get myself out of what I was going through than it would be to stay there and feel the pain of it. And so that fantasy life also led me to be unfaithful to my husband. I had been unfaithful in my mind, but I finally left my husband and went to be with somebody else. And that was about the 10th year of our marriage. And I thought, we're done. I told him I'm 99.9% sure we are never getting back together again. I had even made this list of things that of things about my husband that he wasn't, and so that's the reason why I could never go back to him. And I told myself, look at the list if you just think about going back with him. But he returned to God. He started going to church. He went and got counseling. And I learned there is such a thing as death of a dream, that can be totally ruinous of your life. And my husband, the things he dreamed about the most, having a family of his own, those were all dashed when we couldn't have children. And so he dealt with that and those issues, and I started dealing with mine. And lo and behold, those 7 things I thought would never go away were all gone. And God healed it. And so our marriage was healed. And this past 10 years, we're heading towards our 20th anniversary. I've been so much better than the first. Not perfect. We're still broken people. But we've both been very, very serious about our recovery. This is our 9th year in Celebrate Recovery. And it has just been tremendous. So I'm a big believer of the Christian 12 steps. So that's stuff about me. And the next thing I guess I might as well do is tell you about the ministries that I'm involved with for networking purposes. I ministered to, for the most part, Christian women. Which is funny since I run a men's recovery house, but that was my husband's preference to start a men's recovery house. And so I minister and counsel with them. But in my private counseling, I mainly meet with Christian women and then sometimes Christian couples. But I don't normally meet with men. So I am not really interested in doing one-on-one counseling with men. I could counsel them, but that's not what I'm called to do. I know where I feel comfortable. And God is great about bringing me divine intersections, as I call them. There are Christian women or couples who are at a certain point in their life, and they finally realize that they want help. And God has me pop up in front of them in one way or another. And they are really meant for me, and I'm meant for them. And if you go to my website, you'll see a video kind of like this, very short, about who I am and about the type of clients that I want to work with. And these are people who are serious. They're really serious. They're desperate for help. And if you're not desperate for help, if you don't think you're worth it, if paying for your own counseling is not worth it, then I'm not the person for you. Hey, I go to counseling. I have disordered eating. I've had that for 4 decades, and I have done a lot of healing on my own. But sometimes you just have to go outside of yourself and get help from someone who knows more and who is better trained in that area. And so that's what I do. I see someone else for the areas of my life that are still broken. So that's who I am in regard to counseling. That's who I want to counsel with. And I use different modalities. A big one is life patterns therapy. And that's why I call my ministry Life Patterns Ministry, for doing life patterns counseling. With that, I can basically draw out your entire life and help you see visibly on a board exactly what's going on inside of you, the words that you're using, the phrases, your themes, what's happened to you over and over again, and help you find where that pattern started, and then help heal that, help you make a new decision, help you heal old painful memories. It's amazing what that will do after a session with people, even up at the men's house. When we heal memories, their faces are transformed, the way they see things are transformed, because when you look back over your life, you remember only emotionally charged memories, and most of them are not that great. And so you look over it, and they're kind of like, it's like looking backwards, and there's a mountain range like this. Down in the valleys and down on the sides of the mountains, there's a lot of grass and there's a lot of things in there. But when you're looking back, all you can see are the tops of the mountains. You don't see all the stuff that happened in there. Like I tell my clients, you don't remember every time you've gone to the bathroom or driven a car or eaten a meal. Your brain doesn't remember those things. Your brain remembers emotionally charged memories. And so what I do is I help people deal with those memories they have, because when they look back over their life, they just see the mountaintops, which may be all of these negative things that have happened to them. And that gives them the feeling that their life is doomed, or they just had a bad life, or there's something wrong with them. When in actuality, they're just seeing these places in their life where they got stuck. They were unable to figure out what happened. And so they end up replaying either that situation over and over again, or another situation, in an attempt to somehow try and get this to resolve itself. But it doesn't work that way. So a lot of people are just on autopilot. I help people go off of autopilot. I help them take a look at where they're going and what they're doing and what they're thinking and how they're feeling, and let them make a conscious new decision about it. Because most of the decisions we made about the patterns that we live out were made when we were kids, were made a long time ago. Some of them might have been as an adult, but most of the time a long time ago. And once you make a decision about how you're going to act or how you're going to respond, you never go back and redo the decision. You just act on it. It's a knee-jerk reaction from there on out. So I work with life patterns. Another thing I do as a licensed pastoral counselor, I deal with temperament. Now, temperament analysis is one of the most powerful things that I have as a counselor. Number one, when you take the temperament analysis profile, it's like having 8 sessions with me. I know that much about you. People are stunned. They take the test and it looks like it's asking the same thing over and over and over and over again. And then when I go over the results, they're like, how in the world did that test get that? Yes, that's me. And temperament counseling allows you to learn about what your God-given needs are, that God put in your DNA when you were being formed in the womb. And if you don't get your needs met, you will walk in the worst version of you. Every temperament has strengths and weaknesses. So if your needs are not met, you will walk in your weaknesses, worst version of yourself. But when your needs are being met, you walk in the best version of yourself in your strengths. Most people have no clue what their needs are. And it's not one need all the way across your life. You have needs in different areas of your life. And so once you take the analysis, I then teach you about your needs, most of which you probably had a sense that you had those, but everybody thinks everyone else should be like them. So most people, when you're growing up, your parents think you should be like them, or be like your brother, or be like your sister. And so you try to conform, when deep down you just go, I just want to be left alone. I don't want to hang around with all these people. Okay. I actually had a guy, a client at the house who his temperament said he should just be left alone. He didn't want to be around other people. Other people interfered with who he was and what he was created to be, but his parents thought there was something wrong with him and would force him into public situations. And the way he learned to deal with it at 16 was to drink. And then he could be like everybody else, but that turned into a 15-year-long addiction. So temperament analysis is really powerful, especially with the guys up at the recovery house, because this one guy I'm telling you about, when I told him about his temperament, he just started crying. And he said, you mean there's nothing wrong with me? Anyways, so it really helps people understand that who they are is exactly how God meant them to be. There's weaknesses and strengths, but that's okay too. And so I work with temperament. Another thing that I do, and I'm a big supporter of this, is EFT tapping. That is so powerful. It's science. It doesn't matter. It's not like hypnosis where you have to believe in it. It works whether you believe in it or not. It literally uses it's somatic therapy, it's cognitive behavioral therapy, and it uses acupressure points on your body. But basically what you're doing is you're sending these waves to your amygdala, which is like the fire alarm of your body. It's what makes you scared or sets you off in anger, and makes you, it's your base emotions that just get triggered, and it actually turns off your amygdala. So you can, instead of just responding like an animal, just by your flesh, you can actually think through situations. So EFT tapping is great. I use it with a lot of people. I use it with teenagers, I use it with adults, and I use it on myself a lot. As a matter of fact, I took a course on EFT tapping for weight management, and I was able to tap off every possible craving there is. It's amazing. Ask me about it if you want to know more about that. So these are some of the tools. Another thing is internal family systems. You know, I talked about the emotionally charged memories, those tops of the mountains you see when you look back over your life. Well, internal family systems helps you deal with the different parts of you. Like when you were 11 and something traumatic happened, that 11-year-old part of you is still frozen in time. And I think of it like a snow globe. Still wondering what happened, why did it happen, why did this happen to me? And it was never resolved. And so sometimes when you are in a situation that is similar, or the 11-year-old in you feels like it's similar, the 11-year-old in you will come out and all of a sudden take over and start acting like an 11-year-old. Have you ever wondered, oh my God, why did I just do that? I'm a grown adult. That's because somebody else was driving at that time. So what we do is I teach people how to speak to the parts of them, the older parts of them, the younger parts of them that have been traumatized, and help them talk to and resolve the issues that parts of themselves still have. It's also very powerful. So those are the basic things I wanted to share about there. And that's my counseling. So if you are interested in or know of anyone who needs Christian counseling, whether it's for depression, anxiety, fear, codependency, disordered eating, I'm learning a lot more about that as I go to my own counselor, and also drug and alcohol, because really drug and alcohol is a symptom of something else, but still each one of those has its own specific way it affects you. So that's what I wanted to share. And I'll just real quickly, I'm going to share with you my website just so you know. Hold on a second. And this is my website. And I guide Christians through the pain of their past so they can live in peace and joy in the present. I believe everybody wants righteousness, peace, and joy. They want to be right with God. They want to be one with God. And they want to be free from all the striving of trying to earn everything. And they want to be free from pain, and they want to be able to be content. And so I have several different kinds of services. And one of them is a $50 a month membership where you get one session of individual counseling a month, and you have access to all of my courses, and you have access to me through the system for other issues. I have a courses only, and that's $29.97, and you get access to all of my courses, and you can do messaging counseling with me 2 times a week. So you can send me a message twice a week about what's going on, and I will respond to you about that. And then, of course, I just have my free course, my free membership, which is where you can take my 28-day life patterns course. I give you everything that I know about life patterns, so you can start working on it yourself. And also a book called Crazified and Out of Control, which I have on there. I have another book called Why Don't I Have Any Friends? That's a big question that depressed women ask. But this is the free book that you will get, and it's very, very powerful, if I do say so myself. And if I go back to the store, you'll see all of the different classes that there are. I have got the temperament analysis. Oops, that's the store, not my classes. Courses, here we go. Also, I do anger management classes locally, and I can do them by video. I am certified in the state of Georgia for that. But I've got my 16-week codependency workshop, introduction to shame, disappointment. Smooth speaking is something from a previous era in my life. Firm Foundation is a 13-week discipleship curriculum. The first 6 weeks is on audio. Brokenness, introduction to depression, introduction to codependency, hopelessness, forgiveness, introduction to life patterns, introduction to self-talk. There's a lot of stuff there for you to be able to learn. And again, that's just $1 a day. That comes with messaging counseling with me. Of course, well, I don't know if everybody's going to know this, joint conferences. This is basically what you'd call a fundraiser for Good Shepherd Recovery House. And all of the money from this goes to support men in recovery, giving them jobs, allowing them to work customer support and sales for this. So what we do, joint conferences, allows you to promote yourself to a really big target market for very little money. It's just $14.95 a month or $99 a year. And what you end up doing is hosting and participating in online conferences in the areas of your expertise. So you get to network with other people. You get to be seen in front of other people's markets without anyone sharing their individual email lists. And then, of course, you are able to be seen on, whoops, forgot about this, free online conferences. And free online conferences is where we host all of the upcoming events. So you'll see we've got a networking event, Start Your Own Business, online Christian book fair, and then you can see previous conferences and conferences that we've had, the Christian Women with Depression Conference, Christian Women in Business. So it's just really great that you can host and be known as an expert in your area of expertise. And then the last thing I wanted to share with you is Jesus Text Me. And this is the app that I created. And it was created out of basically a sermon that I preached years ago, where I was talking about the fact that we don't really trust God because we don't really know God and we don't spend time with him. And we forget about him in the middle of the day. So Jesus Text Me doesn't send you scriptures per se. It sends you these individual messages that are based on scripture. So you're getting a text, it sounds like somebody else is texting you, but it's from Jesus. And then it'll have one verse, and then you can click through and read the total of 11 verses, I think, or is it, yeah, total of 11 verses around it. So 3 times a day, you can get in your Bible reading and refocus yourself, recalibrate yourself, turn back to your true north of Jesus Christ with these little texts throughout the day. And it's completely free. And if you'd like to do that, you just go to JesusTextMe.com. Well, I think that is all I'm going to share right now about myself. But I hope that if you find any synergy with me and you'd like to work with me, if you yourself would like some counseling, if you'd like to market yourself through joint conferences and free online conferences, or if you would like to be able to have the text messaging app or the text service for Jesus Text Me to be able to keep you in touch with the Lord, then I invite you to check these out. Thank you very much. I'm Penny Haynes, and I hope I will get a chance to know you better.